I used to think being a good person meant being available. Always. For everyone. For as long as I can remember, my identity was tied to what I could do for others. I was the reliable one. The fixer. The shoulder to cry on at 3 a.m. The one who would pick up the extra shift, bake the cookies for the bake sale I didn't have time for, and listen to the same friend complain about the same bad relationship for the 100th time. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor. I thought the bags under my eyes were proof of my kindness. I thought the knot in my stomach when I saw my phone ring was just the price of being a good friend, a good sibling, a good employee. I was running a marathon with no finish line, carrying everyone else's water bottles while dying of thirst myself. I was a background character in my own life, existing only to facilitate the main plots of everyone around me. I remember looking in the mirror one morning. Really looking. I didn't recognize the person staring back. There was a dullness in my eyes, a deep-seated resentment marked by a practiced, weary smile. I was busy every single minute of the day, yet I felt completely and utterly empty. I had given away so many pieces of myself that there was nothing left just for me. I was a cup with a crack in the bottom, frantically trying to fill everyone else's glass while mine ran dry. It wasn't one big dramatic event that got me there. It was 1,000 tiny cuts. It was the friend who only called when she needed something, a ride, a loan, a sounding board, but was suspiciously busy whenever I needed support. I'd spend hours helping her craft the perfect text message to her ex, and when I mentioned I was struggling with anxiety, she'd say, "Oh, that sucks," and pivot right back to her drama. It was my family, who had come to expect my constant availability. Just ask, my name, they'll do it, became the family motto. I became the default solution for every inconvenience, from planning the anniversary parties to mediating decades-old arguments. If I ever hesitated, even for a second, I was met with guilt trips so masterful they should have been studied. "But we are family," they'd say. "What else are you doing that's so important?" And at work, I was the yes person. The one who took on the extra projects without extra pay because I wanted to be seen as a team player. I stayed late while my colleagues left on time, convinced that my sacrifice would be noticed and rewarded. It rarely was. Instead, my willingness to overextend myself just became the new baseline expectation. A quiet, toxic resentment began to build inside me. I was angry all the time. Angry at my phone for ringing. Angry at people for asking me for things. But mostly, I was angry at myself for never having the courage to say the simplest word in the English language, no. I felt trapped in a prison of my own making, the bars forged from my desperate need to be liked, needed, and approved of. The breaking point didn't happen during a major crisis. It happened on a Tuesday. A perfectly average, unremarkable Tuesday. I had been running on fumes for weeks, fueled by caffeine and anxiety. I had agreed to help a friend move that weekend, promised my sister I'd babysit her kids one evening, and was drowning in a project at work that wasn't even originally mine. I was at the grocery store, staring at a wall of cereal boxes. My phone buzzed. It was another request. A colleague wanted me to cover their presentation the next morning because they just weren't feeling up to it. Something inside me just snapped. The fluorescent lights of the aisle suddenly felt blindingly bright. The cheerful pop music on the store speakers sounded like screeching. My chest tightened, and I couldn't catch my breath. I abandoned my cart right there in aisle 7 and practically ran to my car. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, and I started to cry. Not a gentle, sad cry. A guttural, ugly, shaking sob that came from the very pit of my stomach. I cried for the hours I'd lost, for the disrespect I'd tolerated, for the person I had allowed myself to become. I was exhausted down to my marrow. I realized, in that moment of complete panic and despair, that I couldn't do it anymore. Not one more yes. Not one more favor. Not one more moment of lighting myself on fire to keep others warm. My cup wasn't just empty, it had shattered on the floor. The days that followed were a blur of brain fog and emotional hangover. I called in sick to work for 3 days, something I had never done in my life. I slept. I stared at the wall. I ignored my phone. During that quiet time, I stumbled upon a quote that changed everything for me. It said, "You cannot pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first." It's a cliché, I know. I'd heard it a million times before. But this time, it landed. It wasn't just a cute saying for an Instagram post, it was a fundamental law of nature that I had been ignoring for years. I realized that my kindness hadn't been true kindness at all. It was a transaction. I was giving in hopes of receiving love, validation, and a sense of worth. And because it was transactional, it bred resentment when I didn't get the return I expected. True generosity comes from a place of abundance, from an overflow. What I had been doing was giving from a place of scarcity, scraping the bottom of the barrel until my fingers bled. I started to see that by doing everything for everyone, I wasn't helping them, I was enabling them. I was robbing them of the chance to solve their own problems and grow. And worse, I was teaching them that my time, my energy, and my needs were less valuable than theirs. I had taught people how to treat me, and they had learned the lesson well. The realization was painful, but it was also liberating. If I was the one who built this prison, I was also the only one holding the key. The process of rebuilding wasn't easy. It was messy, uncomfortable, and filled with guilt. The first time I said no to a significant request, I felt physically ill. My friend asked me to bail her out of another self-created crisis, and with a shaking voice, I said, "I can't help you with that this time. I need to rest." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Then came the pushback. The why nots, the subtle accusations of selfishness, the cold shoulder. It was terrifying. I lost friends during this period. People who were only interested in what I could provide for them faded away when the supply was cut off. It hurt deeply. But it also clarified who was truly in my life for me, not just for what I could do for them. I had to relearn who I was. What did I like to do when I wasn't busy serving others? What were my hobbies? What brought me joy that wasn't tied to someone else's approval? It was like meeting myself for the first time in 20 years. I started small. A walk alone in the park without my phone. Reading a book just for pleasure. Saying no to a social gathering because I simply didn't want to go. Slowly, the guilt began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of self-respect. I started to feel lighter. The knot in my stomach loosened. I realized that saying no to others was saying yes to myself. I'm not perfect now. The urge to please, to fix, to be the hero is still there, a well-worn path in my brain. But now I recognize it. I pause. I check in with myself before I commit. I ask, do I have the capacity for this? Am I saying yes because I want to, or because I'm afraid to say no? My life is quieter now. I have fewer friends, but the friendships I have are deeper, more reciprocal, and more honest. My family knows that I love them, but they also know I have boundaries. At work, I do my job well, but I leave on time. I learned that self-care isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. It's the necessary foundation for being able to show up in the world as a whole, healthy person. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Your needs matter. Your energy is precious. And you are worthy of the same kindness, patience, and care that you so freely give to everyone else. So, please, for your own sake, stop pouring from an empty cup. Fill yours first. You just might find that the overflow is far more beautiful and sustainable than the dregs ever were.